here today we're to talk about T+1, the settlement cycle going from T2 to T1 across the US markets and the Canadian markets. So today we're going to kind of discuss first the deadline. We have May 28, 2024 being the deadline, less than a year away. And so it's really creeping up quickly. And just a few issues that we'll talk about. I'm going to concentrate mostly on the buy side, but though obviously it affects all across the industry, sell side, exchanges, definitely clearing entities or DTCC specifically within the US and the Canadian settlement and clearing agencies. But though we look at T1 accelerated timings are going to definitely cover across all areas. Then that results into items like SEC lending, recalls. Recalls are going to have to be probably renegotiated. And then buy-ins also are an aspect. With global investors, that the FX mismatch, the foreign exchange mismatch, is definitely going to cause some issues. And buy-side allocations, this is like, well, FX and buy-side allocations are a major aspect of where it's going to affect the buy side. And it'll be interesting. We'll go into a little detail there. And then kind of to wind up with technical issues, fit for purpose. Basically, we kind of know that there's batch and other aspects that could cause maybe some issues as we move to T+1. So a number of issues, as we talked about, May 2024 being the implementation timeframe for the Canadian markets and the US markets. Interesting is the US markets is it's a regulation determined by the SEC. And in the Canadian markets, it is again in conjunction with the US. But it's not an absolute regulation, but the Canadian markets are going in conjunction with the US markets. As you can see, every aspect, sell side, custodians, asset servicers are all affected. But in the buy side, again, accelerated timings, allocation, and the FX component. And then, as I said, there is actually going to be a record keeping by institutional investors and possibly sell-side agreements with their broker dealers. And then down below, obviously the accelerated timings of current to I have then or in the future at that time frame. And we'll kind of go a little more into the detail in a minute. So this is in the DTCC playbook, which is openly available. And the interesting thing here is that all internal development is already done. And we're actually completely within the testing phase and the industry testing, as you can see, going into basically Q2 of 2024. Now, I think that what we've seen within the industry is really not everybody is up to this type of stage. And I think, quite honestly, as we talk about the buy side, it's going to affect the buy side a lot more than originally expected. Of course, there's benefits. So one of the major benefits is taking a day out of the settlement cycle. I mean, basically reducing the volatility of central counterparty margin requirements. Then there's efficiency, and eventually the alignment between linked markets will be a major benefit. But though, as we know, the European markets are going to be on T2 for a period of time. So there will be a mismatch, but though eventually markets will come into alignment and there will be greater efficiency and less risk along the line there. Now, some of the cons, though, is that 40% of US investment and Canadian investment is by foreign investors. So there's a huge area of foreign exchange, and that we'll go into the detail there, but the FX is settlement cycles is going to be mismatched, and that is definitely going to probably cost and add to fees of trades. And then the alternative instruments, or where there's a combination of international securities along with domestic securities, there's going to be a mismatch of those governments of T1 and T+2. So there are some cons. And then collateral, as I said, is that now foreign investors are going to have to bring in collateral or cash, and that will probably add to the cost of trading. So timing is everything. So right now, currently, is the consolidated trade summary starts on T0, and that you can see 9 p.m. and that's basically the allocation of trades by the buy side, the confirmation, the affirmation, and the confirmation, and the beginning of that batch cycle. Now, the aspect is that on T1, it's a catch up. I mean, basically now in the current environment, there is the time for confirmation of trades or trades that have been decayed and or have issues that they can move through that T1 cycle. And then we have settlement on T2. In the future, or then, is like now the same allocation and confirmation of CTS will start at 10 p.m., except now we're talking about 100% needs to be gone through the system at T0. There's no T1 for catch up. And then, as we talked about, is that the cash settlement will now also be on T1 by 3:30 on T1, and definitely accelerated times. And then a little on the buy-ins out there will be starting on T2 as but that's another whole aspect of the recalls and buy-ins. A kind of a standing comment is, well, are they going to move the international date line? I mean, obviously, as this gets accelerated within the UK, within Europe, within Japan, there's some ideas of, there's obviously extended operation hours, possibly offices are going to be moved more to the West Coast. And these are all issues that are going to have to be dealt with as we move closer to that T1 timeframe. So now to drill down into that FX component. So right now, foreign exchange is on a T+2 settlement cycle or settlement. And within the new T1, cash is going to have to be, US dollars is going to have to be settled on T1. There is some different ideas on how this is going to be accomplished. Is that maybe FX transactions are going to, well, there is already some FX transactions that are settled on T1. More of the currencies might have to move to that T1 settlement cycle, extended trading hours on trading desks for FX, but though probably it's going to be more the pre-funding of trades that are going to have to be on T1, which that means that foreign investors are going to have to redeem their money market positions to be able to do that FX transaction to bring it into US dollars for settlement, which basically comes to the point of that investors are going to lose a night of interest in their money market positions, which then obviously increases the costs of the investment and the trade. As there's been some talk about that it will reduce the amount of investing within US and Canadian securities, but that's probably not the case. I mean, it's for investment there for a while these settlement cycles get worked out and get more in linkage and conjunction. There might be a little increase of costs and fees, but I really don't see that it's going to reduce the actual volume of trading within the US markets. So here's another aspect, which is this is from the final ruling of the SEC uh, of the SEC proposal, or the final rules. So and this is, I'm looking at just the second and third one, the ones that are here in red, is that the idea is to promote the completion of allocations, confirmations, affirmations by the end of the trade date. And that there is now within the final ruling a written agreement between the buy-side asset manager and the broker dealer to address this. And the idea is to bring up automation and the the commitment to make sure all allocations are done on T0. And in addition, registered investment advisors to keep records of the allocations, confirmation, and affirmations of the securities transactions. That right now, it's determined that every broker dealer will have a written agreement with their asset management firms to be able to abide by these requirements. I think this is still in debate, that there's going to be probably verbal and omnibus agreements, but though to actually have an agreement with every asset manager across the board, they clear and deal with trades, seems like it's going to be a little onerous. Now, this leads into right now with client trade matching of DTC, is that roughly around 90% of all clients use CTM. They use the alert for SSIs, standard security settlement instructions. And it's going to be those players that are outside of CTM to be able to move towards that allocation or automation of allocation and confirmations. But though there is a very high rate, as you can see, a 97% matching rate already of the players, though, who use CTM. The smaller players who might not be as automated, that could be problematic, and we'll see how much of that tail causes issues as we move into T1. So now this is here is, so, okay, are we going now to T0? Is that the future? And, you know, just a little, as you can see, it was T+5 back in 65 and moved, and now moving into the future of T0. And so the idea, I think it's going to be a long time for moving to T0. Netting and net settlement is like a major aspect of trading right now. I mean, where you're netting trades, you're reducing the transactions, the cash and the actual security transactions going across with DTCC and the whole clearing aspect of within the U.S. and Canadian markets. So there's some ideas of might move to periodic net settling cycles within the actual trade date. There could be, again, moving to real time. There is some real time already for specific transactions, but though basically it's that netting aspect and continuous net settlement where it reduces the actually amount of payments and movements of securities, which obviously every time a message crosses the wire, there's going to be definitely some fees and costs associated with that. So just real briefly, as we know, is that there's still batch systems involved across the industry. There's like silos of technology. It's going to be interesting. This is definitely more severe than moving from T3 to T2. Down to T1, definitely that compressed time frame is going to stretch those batch cycles. Probably a little more on the sell side and obviously in the clearing houses. And we're going to see whether that there is going to be more stress. And we can see, we already know is that obviously back offices, middle offices are being re-engineered and being able to take advantage of new technology. And we know that across the industry, a lot of that re-engineering is necessary. Within the buy side, probably less idea of having to um, re-architect immediately. It's interesting is the buy side, as the sell side has become very vertical and it's very deep in depth. And as we know that there are some incumbent legacy systems that cause issues there, the buy side has really developed more on a horizontal basis. I mean, basically, a portfolio management system came in to abide by those positions. Then we get into an OMS and an EMS, and then maybe like the outsourcing or even on the accounting side. So there's a little more of that integration from front to back. But though I don't think that is going to affect moving to T1 as much as maybe, again, on the custodian side, the sell side, and on the actual clearing parties. So thank you very much. That is it for today, and enjoy the BuySide 50.